What is up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? We are installing Beyond Dying Skies on Ubuntu 14.04.1. I'm using this version of Ubuntu because my machine is about 10 years old. It has an AMD HD 5770 graphics card, and I need the FireGL drivers that come with this version of Ubuntu. Hopefully you can take the information in this video and apply it to the specific version of Ubuntu that you're using. So the first thing that I'm going to do is navigate to the Downloads folder. So what I want to do is I want to do a git clone from the GitHub repository, and it's going to download the latest version of the minimal graphics library to the downloads folder. While I'm here, I'm also going to get the Beyond Dying Skies repository and put it right by the MGL repository. The MGL is a set of headers that the Beyond Dying Skies game uses. We don't actually have to do any compilation of the MGL, but there are tests. There's a test suite and there's examples that we're going to go through just to make sure that everything's running before we go and actually build the game. So I'm going to go into the MGL directory, and I'm going to go into the scripts folder. And you see I have some scripts for Arch, and I have some scripts for Ubuntu. And I want to install the dependencies. So inside this install dependencies shell file, we're basically installing the build essential suite, which has make, and we're installing git. We already did that. We're installing libvorbis with the headers. We're installing freetype2. We're installing the xorg x11 headers, the GL and the GLU headers, and the OpenAL headers. And that's it. So once this finishes, we're going to check our GCC version and make sure that the GCC version is greater than 5.4, because that's what I've tested it on. We need C++ 14 capability, GCC 6. And this is just going to upgrade my GCC version to 6, because right now it's 4.8.2. All right, that took a while, but we finally got it installed. So let's check that we have the required version of GCC. So I did G++-V, and I got GCC version 6.4.0, so that's good. That'll work. So I'm going to back out to the project root, and I'm going to do a make example1. And we'll see if we get any errors. Hopefully we don't. And I'll just go into that file, and there's nothing in here, so it seemed to have built correctly. Bin X1. I'll see that open a window, and I can control the window with my mouse. So that looks good. I'll press Q to quit out of this. And hey, it looks like we have OpenGL capability now. So how to install this? All we do is do a sudo make install, and that will copy all of the source template files into the user include MGL directory. You can open the make file and just verify that that's all that it does. And at this point, we can throw this folder away. So I'm just going to nuke it because we don't need it anymore. And I'm going to go into the BDS directory, and I'm going to make. It will go looking for the MGL source template files in the user include MGL directory. And because we tested that OpenGL works, we shouldn't have any problems. And let me just check that we have no errors. So we're clean. And all we have to do is type bin/game. And it will open the game for us. First load always takes a while. I'll press F2 to pull up my debug information. And up there on the top right, you'll see idle. Now, if this idle ever gets to be a negative number, that means you're lagging pretty bad. And right now, we've built the game with no optimizations. So this is kind of the minimal requirements. And you'll see that it works, but it's a little choppy. And it's a little choppy because we didn't build with optimizations. And I know that this graphics card supports OpenGL 4.3, so I'm gonna add some optimizations here. So the audio cut out, and I'm narrating over the video from now on. I'm going to define and export MGL-VB43 equal true, and I'm also going to export MGL-GSRender equal true. Now what that does, it enables OpenGL 4.3 capability, and also it sets the use of geometry shaders to render the terrain. And both of these should speed up the game significantly over the default options. The number of OpenGL calls will be lower by a factor of 2, and also the CPU won't have to be generating terrain memory buffers every frame. So you'll see that with the debug text, if you just look at the idle percentage, yeah, it's a little bit higher. It's about 60, 70, 80 comparing to the 20, 30, 40, 50 that we were seeing earlier. It's not a huge difference, but sometimes it's a make or break depending on the machine. So let's talk about runtime flags. There's a -FPS flag that you can set the rendering frames to 30. By default, it's 60. So this should increase the idle. The playback is at 30 frames, and the idle is up to about 90, 85, 90, which is great. The physics engine runs at 180 frames, and the rendering engine, by default 60, here it's 30. If you want to increase the view distance, you can just set that with the -view flag. It takes a integer value that's odd and that's greater than 3, because 3 is the default, has to be greater than 1. So if you set the view to 15, that will render 7 chunks in every dimension, XYZ direction, that are inside the frustrum. So you'll see that the number of chunks went up to from 50 to about 600 with that. We're just rendering way more geometry with that flag, and if you have a really good GPU, you can get away with that, and it's not really a big deal. But with this is an introduction to building Beyond Dying Skies on Linux from source. So if you guys have any questions, suggestions, or comments, go ahead and leave that in the comment section below. If you try to build and you get OpenGL errors or errors during the build, go ahead and put those comments over on the GitHub issue tracker. That way we can solve bugs as they come up, and it'll just be easier to help you on that platform rather than in the YouTube comments. Also, I'm not going to support building on Windows because that's a little bit more complicated, and that's beyond the scope of this video. So with that, I'll just leave you with the gameplay, signing out, and until the next video, see you guys and take care. Bye.